So, outgoing exchange. It's pretty simple. It's three different products: global volunteer, global talent, and global entrepreneur. Uh, First difference is the price point. It's 750 and then 860 for the two professional internships, global talent and entrepreneur. Um, and then the big difference is the big difference is the difference between where they'll be working. So in Global Volunteer, it's you're working in an NGO. With Global Talents, you're working at a small to medium enterprise or a multinational corporation or a startup. And with Global Entrepreneur, it's you're mainly working at startups. And the biggest difference also the time periods. So with Global Volunteer and Global Entrepreneur, those are targeted towards the people who want to do something over summer. They don't have too much time maybe. Um, it's 6 weeks to 3 months. And then Global Talent is generally quite long. As you can see, it goes from 6 weeks to 78 weeks, which is about a year and a half. So that's designed for graduates and people who just, who are looking for a long-term stay. The last few things are with Global Talent, it's paid, whilst the other two aren't. Um, you shouldn't sell that as, oh, Global Talent is like this big paid thing that everything's covered. More talk about it as a bonus. It like pays enough to cover like just enough food and accommodation. It's kind of like an additional thing. And the primary purpose, you can also use this to differentiate how you sell it. It's for Global Volunteer, it's about social impact. You want to change something about the world, your life, the culture, you want to learn something. Whereas professional experience is all about, pushing your career forward. So when you're trying to sell outgoing exchange, it's very important that you differentiate this among those lines by understanding first, like asking them, what they study, what they're about, and then also ensuring asking about how long they want to go, because then that can cut them down to only maybe one, two of them, or maybe only just one of the products. And then ask them, like what do they aim to do? Do you want to like go and do you want to help with the SDGs? If in that case, that's a global volunteer. Do you want to help with, do you want to work on your career? And then that's easy enough. That's how you kind of keep a conversation going, but at the same time letting them know, and also like kind of um, ensuring that you sell the right products to the right people. So the next thing is, sorry, go back. Uh, it's our relevance. So a lot of the times we try to sell exchange and we're saying, hey, with us, you can change the world. And I think the reaction to that mainly is, really? People are very skeptical of the idea, and that's fair enough, because there's a lot of organizations that say the same thing. It's almost every other club you go to, plastic diet, the volunteer club. They're saying they're changing the world, they're changing New Zealand, and when you hear that so many times, after a while you go, I don't know if I believe you. And especially if you don't show like the action, the kind of methods you need to take to achieve it. Because like if you just say it, people won't believe it. You need to show them. And that's relevant to how we sell ourselves. So when we're talking about ISIC, you can't just give them statements and buzzwords and expect them to believe it. You need to weave a story, um, and you need to create this idea within them that this is something relevant for them. And what you do is, yeah, you need to talk about how we're relevant to New Zealand youth. So if you think about the individual, the relevance we have is, as an individual, a lot of people in uni, they're trying to do something. They're trying to either further their careers, or they're trying to make a social impact, um, and they want to go out there and change something. And how you talk about the individual is, this is the one we usually commonly use, is how do you what do you want to do, what do you want to change about the world, how do you want to, I don't know, make an impact. And they'll have various ideas. They'll have the SDGs that they're interested about. What you need to talk to them and let them know is, it's hard to make it's even when you are trying to make an impact within New Zealand, it's very hard when you don't have international experience. Because what international experience does is, imagine this: You're a person who's lived all your life in one country with, your parents, same parents, it's the same ideas over and over again. When it comes to solutions, it's not the same ideas that are the ones that are going to work, because the same ideas have been tried and maybe they don't work. If you want to solve a problem, if you want to contribute to a issue, you need to bring something new. And how are you ever going to bring something new if your life is mainly revolved around New Zealand? And even if you're like a recent immigrant to New Zealand, like after a while, you're going to get used to New Zealand, and it's reality. You're going to get used to how the world functions in New Zealand. It's a very stable country and it's very safe. So if you want to start creating an impact, you need to go overseas. You need to go international to gain a better understanding of your impact. You need a fresh perspective, and going to another country is another perspective, mainly because it's a completely different environment. It's crazy different. You're stuck somewhere, and you don't know what the culture is like there. It's a different language. It's almost another world, and then then you start to see that there's similar issues, poverty, and but to greater extents, different extents, and you when you start working on the SDGs overseas, you see the way they tackle those issues, and the way they tackle those issues are, they could be similar, but they're more likely to be very, very different, because if you're going to somewhere where poverty is endemic, it needs to be more effective. um, it needs to be more effective to rectify that issue. And imagine if you brought that solution over to New Zealand. Imagine how much easier it might be to work on those issues in New Zealand. And it's that kind of perspective that's relevant. And that's just the individual. So now think about like New Zealand society. And this is where our international partners kind of come into being quite important. So I'm just going to use GT as an example, but GV has slightly different partners that are also just similarly relevant. So right now I have three pictures. This is Indonesia, China, and India, and those are GT's upcoming main international partners. And you'd ask, why are they important? Well, there's a very important reason. They're some of the biggest countries in the world. Indonesia is the fourth largest nation in the world, and then India and China have 1 billion people each, so they are massive, and they're also the countries that are the closest to us in terms of geography and also economically. So now think about it into a GT perspective, or think about it like just like about your career. What does New Zealand need as a society? What does it need? It needs a better economy. It needs to progress, right? How does it do that? It does that by it does that by economic ties. It does that by international trade and partnerships, right? And New Zealand graduates are valued around the world. Um, and New Zealand is seen as an economy that's quite interesting to work with, because it has a good, highly advanced population. But what advances New Zealand further in terms of its international trade and partners is if its citizens understand what it is like to be a part of these cultures. Like it understands the work, the economics, the political structures of these nations. Imagine if you're this person who went on an internship to China. You learned how that working style was, which is completely different. Sorry about that. If you start to understand that China, the working style they have, the kind of economic style they have, the kind of motivations that the people have, and so does the government and the companies. You bring that knowledge back to New Zealand, and it's invaluable. That kind of knowledge this is why people are interested when you put on your CV that I did an internship, because that's the kind of stuff that will because that's the kind of things that in a company that is quite invaluable. If you have a worker that understands how to work with these people overseas who are our biggest economic partners. Now you imagine only about 40 people. What is it? We send 30 people almost every year on GVs, and like GTs, let's say 10. You see that those 10 people, they come back. One person can create a great idea and a create company and create all these jobs and all these opportunities. Imagine 10 people, who move through this corporate world and then create their own ideas using their own motivations and their own knowledge and understanding. And now we work harder, and there's 20 people, there's 30 people, the more people, and these people come back every year, and then there's more people every year who seem to understand how our economic partners work and how to work with these tires and grow them. Imagine how that influences in New Zealand the economy. It will help grow it. You need these entrepreneurial people to grow economy, and the more people, the people we reach, the more change we create, because these people create change. And then what happens is the New Zealand economy grows. Ideally, like we get new businesses, we get new job opportunities, and then that just helps New Zealand society as a whole, because you get more opportunity for everyone. And so that's the way I kind of want to think about OGX for now, instead of just being this thing we think very macro. We The individual is important, and we just think about, but we also just think about just the leadership opportunity. But just think, if because we say it all the time, like, if you are going to change the world, how is it that we change the world? Because I do believe that there's a lot of impact that ISEC can do, but we really need to start believing it, and we need to start letting people know what we truly can achieve. So that's OGX. So we'll move on from now.